In the small village school of Bala town, the hall was filled with laughter and loud applause. It was Daddy and Me Day, a special event where fathers came to cheer for their children. Kids wore matching hats with their dads, danced, sang, and smiled brightly. But in the middle of all the joy, one little girl stood quietly near the back of the stage. Her name was Zuri. She wore a crown made of paper that she had made herself with love, hoping someone would cheer for her too. But there was no one. She was the only child without a father in the crowd. She looked around, eyes wide, searching, maybe still hoping he would show up. But he didn't. Instead, the other children laughed, and a teacher, thinking she was being funny, said loud enough for others to hear, "Maybe your daddy is invisible." The crowd giggled. Zuri's tiny hands tightened around her crown, and her smile faded. She blinked back tears, trying to stand tall, trying not to cry in front of everyone. She had practiced her little song for days. She had hoped someone would be there, just for her. But now, her voice felt too small. She sang anyway. Alone. No one clapped. Not even the teacher. But in her heart, she whispered, "Maybe one day, someone will clap just for me." That day, the stage felt like the loneliest place in the world. But Zuri stood on it with all the courage she had. That night, when the stars were quiet and the world had gone to sleep, little Zuri sat alone in a corner of the janitor's break room at Safacorp Towers. Her mother, Kayamika, was working the night shift again, scrubbing the long marble floors of the tall, shiny building. The place was silent except for the soft sounds of her mother's mop moving back and forth. Zuri knew she wasn't supposed to be there. Kids were not allowed in the building after hours. But she couldn't stop thinking about what had happened at school. Her heart still hurt. Her paper crown was crushed in her small bag. No one had clapped for her. No one had come. As her mother moved down the hall to clean another section, Zuri quietly tiptoed down a different hallway, one she had never entered before. The lights were dim. At the very end was a big door made of glass and gold. Behind it was a fancy room with a big desk, soft chairs, and pictures of a man in suits. She had seen his face before. His name was Cairo Safa. The CEO. The big boss. Her mother had once said he was the richest man in Africa. Zuri pushed the door gently. It opened. Her heart beat fast. She took out a small piece of paper from her pocket. It was a note she had written herself in big, careful letters. She placed it on the golden desk, right in the center. Her handwriting wasn't perfect, but her words were full of feeling. It said, "You are rich. I don't want money. I just want to borrow a daddy, for one day." At the bottom, she signed it, Zuri, the girl without applause. She looked around one last time, her eyes wide. The room smelled like new leather and expensive cologne. Everything sparkled. It felt like a place where important things happened, not a place for a little girl in second-hand shoes. But still, she stood tall. For the first time all day, she didn't feel invisible. She was leaving behind something that mattered, her truth. Then, without a sound, she tiptoed back down the hall, her small footsteps soft against the shiny floor. She didn't tell her mother. She didn't say a word. That letter wasn't for anyone else. Just for him. She didn't even know if he would see it. But in her heart, she believed he would. She had to believe. Maybe, just maybe, someone would read her words and understand how much she needed to be seen, just once. Later that night, as Kayamika gently carried her sleeping daughter back home, she didn't know a letter was resting on a golden desk. She didn't know that those simple words, written in pencil by a little girl with a big heart, would soon shake the life of the man who owned the building. Zuri had no idea what would come next. She had only written her pain. But sometimes, the smallest voice can echo the loudest, if it speaks from the heart. Cairo Safa was known all over Africa. He was the youngest billionaire, the man who built an empire from nothing. People called him a genius, a boss, a shark. He was always busy, business meetings, private jets, big deals. His days were full of numbers, contracts, and power. But emotions? He had no time for those. Kids. He never wanted any. He didn't believe in charity, or love, or anything soft. His heart was locked away, and he liked it that way. Until one morning, when his assistant handed him a small letter left on his desk the night before. It wasn't typed. It wasn't official. It was written in pencil on simple paper, shaky handwriting, no envelope. Cairo read the words once. Then again. And again. You are rich. I don't want money. I just want to borrow a daddy, for one day. Zuri, the girl without applause. Something inside him stopped. The room felt colder, quieter. This letter wasn't business. It was something else. Something that reached deep into a part of him he had ignored for years. His hands gripped the paper tightly. Who is this girl? He demanded. No one had an answer. Angry and confused, Cairo marched out of his office, down the halls, and into the janitor's area. His security team rushed behind him, unsure what was happening. In the small, plain room, Kayamika was folding her cleaning cloths. When she saw him, her heart dropped. Her hands froze mid-air. She hadn't seen Cairo since that one night, a long time ago, a night of quiet kindness, after which he disappeared like a ghost. He had no idea. No idea about the little girl they created. No idea about the life Kayamika had lived alone. And now, here he was, standing at her door, holding that letter. Cairo stared at her, eyes full of questions. Is this your daughter? He asked, holding up the paper. Kayamika's lips trembled. She wanted to lie. She wanted to run. But she couldn't. The truth was standing between them, and it had a name, Zuri. Yes, she whispered. She's mine, and yours. The air went still. Cairo looked like the wind had been knocked out of him. For a man who controlled millions, who signed papers that changed countries, he suddenly felt powerless. He had a daughter. A real, living daughter, and she had written him, not for money, not for gifts, but just to borrow a father. For one day. His heart, the one he thought was made of stone, cracked a little. All the years he had chased success, all the things he thought mattered, and he had missed this. He had missed her. Zuri. The girl without applause. His daughter. He didn't say much after that. He just looked down at the paper one last time and quietly asked, where is she now? And in that moment, everything in Cairo Safa's life began to change, not because of money, or fame, but because of one small letter, written by one small girl, with the biggest heart he had ever known. The next school event came quickly, a big day with music, dancing, and performances. Parents dressed up, holding flowers and phones, ready to cheer for their children. The school gates were busy with cars arriving, but then something unusual happened. A long, black Rolls-Royce slowly pulled up outside the school. The car was shiny, expensive, and so quiet that it felt like the world paused for a second. Security men in black suits stepped out first, their eyes scanning the crowd. People whispered and stared. Who could it be? Then, the back door opened, and out stepped Cairo Safa. Africa's youngest billionaire. Everyone knew his face from the news and magazines. But what truly shocked them wasn't his suit, or his car, or even the powerful way he walked, it was the tiny hand he was holding. It was Zuri. Her hair was neatly braided, her dress bright and new. She didn't look nervous this time. She looked proud. And right beside her, holding her hand like it was the most important job in the world, was her father. As they walked through the school gates, whispers turned to silence. Teachers froze. Parents stopped talking. Even the kids stared. The same girl who had stood alone just days ago now walked in like royalty, not because of the billionaire next to her, but because of the love in his eyes when he looked at her. A teacher, the same one who once made a cruel joke, stepped forward and asked, "Excuse me, sir, who are you?" Cairo looked straight at her, calm and clear. "I'm her father," he said. "I came to watch my princess shine." Zuri looked up at him and smiled, not the shy, quiet smile she once wore, but a bright, glowing one, like the sun finally rising. When it was her turn to perform, Zuri walked onto the stage with confidence. She wore her new crown, this time made of silver and sparkles. The music began, and she danced, light on her feet, full of joy. She didn't look for anyone in the crowd. She didn't need to. She knew exactly where he was, front row, eyes only on her. The hall was completely silent during her dance. Then, when she finished, something happened that had never happened before. The entire hall stood up. Every parent, every teacher, even the principal. They clapped, loud, strong, and with tears in their eyes. Some cried because they saw beauty. Some cried because they saw love. But most cried because they saw a little girl who once had no one, now shining with everything she ever wished for. And Cairo? He didn't blink. He didn't speak. He just stood and clapped harder than anyone. His eyes were glassy, but he didn't hide it. He wasn't the man who ran from emotions anymore. He was just a father, finally seeing his daughter for who she really was. And for the first time in Zuri's life, the applause wasn't just loud. It was hers. Every single clap. The day after the school event, photos began to spread like wildfire. Someone had taken a picture of Cairo Safa, the billionaire, sitting in the front row of a small village school, holding a flower in his hand and clapping with tears in his eyes as a little girl danced. Another photo showed him walking in, holding Zuri's tiny hand like it was the most precious thing in the world. People didn't believe it at first. "Is that really him?" they asked online. "The Cairo Safa? With a schoolgirl?" The internet exploded with questions. Why would the richest man in Africa attend a school show in a small village? Who was that little girl? Journalists rushed to find out. They called the school. They found Kayamika. They searched through old employee records, and soon, the truth came out: Zuri wasn't just any child. She wasn't just the daughter of a janitor. She was Cairo Safa's daughter. His blood. His little girl. The same man who once said he had no time for kids, had one. And he didn't even know it. People were shocked. Some were angry. How could he not know? How could he leave a woman to raise his child alone? But others saw something else. They saw a man who had finally come back. A man who had everything but was empty, until now. Cairo didn't hide from the truth. He didn't send lawyers or release cold press statements. He stepped in front of cameras and told the world, "Yes, she's mine. And I failed. But I'm here now. And I'm not leaving again." The story touched hearts everywhere. News channels covered it for days. "Billionaire finds hidden daughter," the headline said. People from all over the world shared Zuri's dance video, calling her the little girl who changed a giant's heart. Comments poured in, some from single mothers who felt seen, others from children who wished for the same kind of moment in their own lives. Everyone was talking about the girl who once stood alone on stage. And the man who almost missed the most important part of his life. For Cairo, it was more than just headlines. It was a wake-up call. He sat alone one night, reading the letter Zuri had left on his desk again and again. "I just want to borrow a daddy, for one day." That one line cut deeper than any business loss, deeper than anything he had ever faced. He realized that all the money in the world meant nothing if he couldn't show up for the one person who truly loved him, not for his fame, not for his cars or power, but simply for being her father. He had missed her first steps. Her first words. Her birthdays. But he promised himself that he would not miss another moment. From now on, he would be there, not as a visitor, not as a borrowed daddy, but as her real one. And somewhere, as the world watched and talked and cried, Zuri sat quietly in her room, her silver crown beside her, knowing deep in her heart, she was finally seen. Just a few weeks ago, Zuri was the little girl no one noticed, the one who stood alone on Daddy and Me Day, holding a paper crown she made by herself. No father to clap, no hand to hold. People laughed. A teacher even joked that her daddy must be invisible. But now, everything had changed. The world had seen what happened when her billionaire father, Cairo Safa, showed up at school, holding her hand and calling her his princess. That moment was caught in photos and videos, and they went viral. People couldn't stop talking about the little girl who melted the heart of Africa's richest man. And in just 1 month, Zuri had become a symbol of something much bigger than anyone expected. Cairo started a campaign called Fathers Who Show Up, and Zuri became its face. Her story reminded people everywhere that children don't want money or fancy things, they just want love, time, and someone to show up for them. Posters of Zuri smiling were seen on buses, buildings, and phones. Her words, "I just wanted to borrow a daddy," made millions cry. The campaign encouraged fathers to be present in their children's lives. Schools held events. Families had deeper talks. Even companies joined in to support the message. But that wasn't all. Cairo knew he had made a mistake in the past, and he wanted to make things right, especially for Kayamika, the woman who raised Zuri all on her own. She had worked as a janitor in his building, scrubbing floors while hiding her struggles. So he created something meaningful, a women's support foundation that would help single mothers, widows, and struggling women find strength and support. And the person he chose to lead it was Kayamika. From cleaning floors to sitting at the head of a foundation, her journey inspired millions. Her story was shared everywhere. People called her the strongest woman in Africa. She gave interviews, helped launch programs, and guided women who had once felt forgotten, just like she had. And then there was the teacher. The one who laughed at Zuri, who made her feel small when she was already hurting. Parents were angry. The school received letters, calls, and even visits. People demanded action. The school board held a public meeting. And right there, in front of everyone, they announced the teacher had been fired. No child should ever be made to feel ashamed for something they cannot control. It was a moment of justice, not just for Zuri, but for every child who had ever felt invisible. Through it all, Zuri stayed gentle, kind, and full of light. She didn't change because of fame. She still danced around the house, still wore her paper crown proudly, and still held her mother and father's hands tightly. She had gone from a forgotten girl in the corner of a classroom to a bright light the whole world followed, and all because of one simple wish, to be seen, loved, and never alone again. 1 year later, the school hall in Bala town looked the same, but everything felt different. The chairs were still lined up neatly, the same old stage was there, and the decorations were made by children's tiny hands. But this time, little Zuri wasn't standing alone. She stood proudly in the center of the stage, holding the hands of both her mother and her father. Her paper crown had been replaced by a sparkling tiara, gifted to her by her dad, but her smile, full of love and truth, was still the same. The crowd waited silently, eyes full of emotion. Zuri looked out at everyone, her classmates, teachers, parents, and took a deep breath. Her voice was soft but strong as she said, "Last year, I wrote a letter asking to borrow a daddy. But I don't need to borrow anymore. I have one for life." Her words filled the room like magic. And then, the sound of clapping began. It grew louder and louder, until the walls themselves felt like they were shaking. The applause wasn't just for her. It was for everything her story had changed. People cried, hugged their children tighter, and smiled through their tears. And Cairo? The man once too busy to feel, now held his daughter's hand tightly, with tears rolling down his cheeks. It was the first time in years that he had cried, not out of pain, but because his heart was finally full. This wasn't just a school event anymore. It was a celebration of healing, of family, and of one little girl who believed in love strong enough to change the world.